You may now start, Commissioner.
Good afternoon. I'm Roy Priest, the Chair of the Housing Opportunity Commission, and I want to welcome you to our October 6, 2021 monthly meeting. I am joined today by our Vice Chair, Fran Kelleher, Chair Pro Tem Rick Nelson, Commissioner Jeffrey Merkowitz, Commissioner Linda Kroom, and Commissioner Pamela Bird. Commissioner Simons will not be present at today's meeting. We will now proceed with the agenda for the October 6th meeting. The first event is the Community Forum.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. We have two individuals who are signed up for the Community Forum today. The first individual is going to be Romaine Canty-Massey. So I will ask AJ to please admit that individual now.
Romaine has been admitted.
Hello, you are now a speaker. Hello,
Is our speaker
Canty?
with us?
Romaine, can you please unmute? Hello, Romaine.
Yes, this is Romaine Canty.
Thank you for joining us. Your time will begin now.
Okay.
Go ahead and speak to us, Ms. Canty.
Oh, I thought I was supposed to, listen to the meeting first.
No.
I do have a question though. And my question is, there's been a lot of information that's turning up to my attention that, people were jumping the wait list and other people were being put in front of other people who were waiting longer, okay? And there's also some written documentation to this as well. On the HOC website with one person complaining of the same thing about how long he has been on the wait list and what he was told in the beginning because of his disabilities. And, he was told that because of his conditions being disabled, the wait would be anywhere from 1 year to 3 years. Now, when I put my son on the wait list, I was told the same thing. I was told the same thing by somebody who works at the HOC office as well as the guardianship counselor. And my son has been on the wait list now since 2018. And also, another red flag popped up to me, which we did resolve that. That got resolved last week about the wait list of when you apply for the wait list and you apply for a program, there are other programs on that wait list. And whenever they send you the yearly update to update your application, you have to update all the applications. I wasn't aware of that. So therefore, 9 of his applications had closed. And I'm like, hey, how can this happen? Because other PHAs, I don't go through that. You just update your application and then you get a number, your wait list number, and everything shows up for every program, that you're in. So that's why this was like different for me. Okay, so I would like some clarity on that. And I would also like to know, what are y'all doing in regards to, complaints of people acting fraudulent or putting their favorites in place of other people, making them wait longer? I do have concerns when it comes to that.
Mrs. Canty, I want to thank you for asking to appear before the commission today, and I'm glad that the concern that you had about your son's position on the wait list was in fact addressed last week. We do take very seriously any complaints that we receive or any comments that we receive from persons related to the wait list management. We take great pride in the fact that, in fact, no individual employee has the ability or capacity to adjust or make any changes to the wait list because of the way in which it's structured. But we will, in fact, follow with anything that we receive in terms of information. So I want to thank you very much. And I'm glad that your son is now back on all of the waiting lists that he desires to be an applicant for. So thank you very much for your comments. And we look forward to continuing to work with you.
Okay. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thank
Next
you very
speaker.
much.
The next speaker is Liz Brennan.
I do not see her in the waiting room.
Okay, it appears that Ms. Brennan is not in the waiting room. I will note that staff did reach out to Ms. Brennan earlier today to discuss her issue with her. And so it may be that she has decided not to participate in the community forum after resolving that issue.
Okay. Thank you very much. There are no other persons who signed up to appear in the community forum. So this will in fact end the community forum portion of our agenda. And we'll move on now to receive a report from Karine Brown, who is the acting executive director of the HOC. Ms. Brown.
Okay, good afternoon, commissioners, staff, and the viewing public. This is the executive director's report for October 6th, 2021. There's quite a bit to speak of today, and I'll try to be as brief as possible. The first item touches on the emergency rental assistance funding, and this has been subject of much discussion lately, but I'd like to report that members of the HOC leadership team and myself have been involved in discussions with the county's director of health and human services, Dr. Raymond Kroll. We met on September 28th to really explore ways to advance distribution of the funding that's available to the county, and in particular to HOC and the nonprofits. I'd say it was a productive meeting, and I think this has sort of opened the door for re-engagement between DHHS and HOC. There was a briefing with the council yesterday. There was a lot of discussions around the rental assistance itself, as well as evictions, and maybe some of you have watched it, but there's still much work to be done. Tomorrow there's a meeting between MHA and the county executive, and we expect that MHA will put forth some of the ideas that we've discussed with Dr. Crowell. In particular, there's the idea of advanced funding to some of the landlords, but limiting that amount to 50% of the amount of the request, and they're pushing for an increase of that amount to 90%, and also to increase the area median income level served from 50% to perhaps 60% of the area median, or even 70%. And so, we'll continue to push for additional funding for HOC. There's a second round of the rental assistance funding that's available and will be coming to the county. I think it's about 30 million more. So there's still more to go around, and we'll continue to engage and to clarify some of the information. Some of it has been misstated, and to follow up with whatever additional information hasn't been provided or they think haven't been provided, to ensure that as much of the funding that's available and can be distributed to HOC and the nonprofits, because I think that us and the nonprofits are probably the least served through this process. Moving now to information technology. As we continue to work remotely, IT continues to play a prominent role in our business operations. And October has been designated Cybersecurity Month. This was launched in 2004 by the U.S. Department of Homeland Security and the National Cybersecurity Alliance. And during this time, HOC will step up its effort to ensure that our data isn't subject to malware attacks, hacking, and ransomware. You've heard this in the news lately. It's been many businesses have been targeted. And so we want to make sure that when our landlords need to be paid, that can happen. And so HOC has been conducting a phishing campaign where emails are sent to trick employees into clicking on them to see if they're really thinking about cybersecurity and recognizing quickly when something isn't legitimate. And we're also, the IT department has also installed double authentication for access to our software applications, so that there are more than one ways to identify you as the actual user of the applications that we have running on our systems. So that's a huge positive. And on the lines of IT as well, we've recently completed on September 24th an upgrade to our Yardi system, and this will allow us to our emergency vouchers that we've received to fully utilize and run our those vouchers through the Yardi program. And this was critical for us to be able to fully utilize that platform for those vouchers. So that was absolutely necessary, and we're happy it's done, and it was done successfully. The Housing Resources Division has been busy as well. In particular, the Family Self-Sufficiency program continues to grow despite the pandemic. And this is part of the HOC goal of one of the softer side of HOC of helping our families reach their full potential. And the FSS coordinator participated in a roundtable meeting that was hosted by the District of Columbia Housing Authority, during which they discussed rent reporting, program successes and challenges, and enrollment issues. And I think HOC was one of the two groups that saw growth in its program during the pandemic. In fact, I think most people are surprised by the level of growth that program has seen. On the voucher selection side, the emergency housing vouchers, the county's Department of Health and Human Services that's required to send referrals to HOC. They've had some challenges with sending enough applicants to us timely. So far, we've received 28 referrals, and 16 families have been determined eligible from that group. They've committed to increase that number by mid-October to about 50. And so we continue to work with them to utilize those vouchers, because, as you know, those serve some of the neediest in our population, and it's important that we fully utilize them. On the regular Housing Path waitlist, or Housing Choice Voucher Program, in the last month, we pulled about 400 from the list. Our utilization rate is currently still at 92, and we aim to boost it to 95. And there are about 130 vouchers that have been issued to new families. 339 are seeking units for rent, and there are about 107 that are pending inspections. And so we're expecting that in near term, we're going to be able to boost that number certainly up to the 95% level. Currently, one of the issues that we're facing, or one of the challenges, I should say, is really staffing. And there's some staff turnover, and when that happens, it's really finding folks in the marketplace to replace them, train them, and get them up to speed. And so I think this last month, we're tapping into our own internal resources, in particular where we find if there's staff that's not fully utilized because of the nature of their work pre-pandemic, in trying to reallocate resources to help in this effort. So we're doing all that we can and running really fast to increase utilization. And switching now over to resident services, also part of keeping people housed. The service coordination section of the resident services division has been very active. The resident service division, unsurprisingly, has been extremely active in engaging with residents, although mostly virtually, but they've been very active in ensuring that folks have referrals to the services they need, and they themselves have been engaged in not just referrals, but on the ground helping the folks that we're serving. And so in September, they continued their work mostly virtually, as I said, with a number of referrals of our customers to food and other types of assistances. And they continue to conduct wellness checks. They're referring folks to any services that they find that are needed to help folks stabilize their housing. They also assist with filling out applications for rental assistance, pointing folks in the direction for assistance with utilities and things like that. And they also help with food distribution, as well as when the housing choice voucher briefings are happening, resident services is there to assist them. As part of engaging across divisions in HOC, there's currently about 795 units of HOC that's either under rehab or in the planning stages preparing for rehab, and resident services is also part of that process, in that they're helping to explain the process to residents, and they're also just helping with the transition when folks need help, understanding what's really happening around them, and helping them to box up their materials and things like that. Resident services staff are called upon to assist in some way. On the programming side, the resident services staff provide help with food services in concert with Mano Food Center, Emmanuel Brinklow, one of our Seventh-day Adventist Church, one of our main partners for our resident services program, as well as the Capital Area Food Bank, Senior Brown Bag, and My Groceries to Go program. They've provided in September food to 400 customers, and they continue to facilitate the senior nutrition program, which is really important for our seniors. There are a host of other activities that the programming side of resident services are involved in, including energy saving workshops. And this is a big one because you may not think about it, but many seniors either don't think about their dental work, or they don't have insurance coverage for their dental work. But there was a grant provided of $100,000 that enables seniors to have access to dental care for crowns and extractions and a variety of needs. And so resident services, at no cost to them, nonetheless, resident services staff continues collaboration with Montgomery County's Primary Care Coalition and Catholic Charities to refer seniors who don't have the appropriate dental coverage to these services to ensure that they at least have access. And because, as you know, the mouth is a gateway to many other parts of your body, and so this is a huge help for seniors. So again, this division is really important, an important part of the overall HOC services, and helping people reach their full potential. And it's really not just for seniors. There's the HOC Academy that continues to focus on the youth, and also on adults who are aiming to start their own business in the business development aspect. People who want to register their own business, resident services group, and their adult education and workforce development area continues to work with them in that regard. Our fatherhood initiative continues to be a highlight for HOC. In fact, it's a model of one of the best practices in the country, and we've enrolled 190 fathers for the year. The target was 180, so we're exceeding expectations there. And there are some other goodies in the report that you can look at, but I think all told, we're really working toward reaching our residents where they are. There are still challenges. Not everything is swimmingly golden, because the needs are so tremendous and the resources are so limited. But we do our best to do the best we can. Switching to the real estate side. Wanted to highlight for you the fact that Bar Park is still under renovation. We're making steady progress there. There are 3 buildings. One building is complete, one is mostly complete, and one hasn't started yet. But I think the highlight here for this report is a tri-generation system that's being installed, which is a combination of cooling, heat, and power system that it's really a sustainable initiative that will save energy for the building itself, and realize savings to the customer, to our residents at the site as well. And we are estimating that it will reduce greenhouse gas emissions by about 30% overall. So this is all in line with what we're aiming to be better to the environment and save money to our customers. So we're quite proud of that. The renovation of the 17 units of Brook Park, for those commissioners who have been here for quite some time, you must be thrilled to hear that. The units are complete, and the lease up is beginning. I think there were residents lined up to take advantage of these newly renovated and quite attractive units. And lastly, we closed on the ground lease for Garnkirk Farms in Clarksburg on September 17th. And our next step will be the pre-development funding, which will come to you followed by the operating agreement for the vertical development of the property. And we're expecting to break ground in sometime in 2023, I believe. So that concludes the report. There will be much more to tell you about in the next several cycles as we continue to keep our folks housed and to help them reach their full potential. So that's it for today.
Thank you very much for your report, Ms. Brown. Are there any comments or questions from commissioners?
Yeah, I have a question. This is Commissioner Kroom. I have a question from the resident council, if it's anybody on Zoom. I wanted to know, how do the seniors find out about the food bank and the dental care? Is it the only ones that are on our properties, on our senior properties, or is a letter going out to all the seniors telling them about the food bank and the dental care?
Fred, you're on mute if you're okay.
Did you hear me?
Yes, we heard you, but Fred is trying to answer. He's on mute.
Oh.
Sorry about that, but yes, the counselors at the sites, at the property sites, advertise the services to the residents, and that's how we connect them to the services through our counselors on each of the property sites.
The only ones that we're doing the dental and the food bank for is the ones that are on our properties?
Yes.
Okay.
Like currently at this time, yes.
If there are no other questions from commissioners, I would like to move.
I just want to make a quick comment, which is to thank Kayreen. It's a very thorough report and appreciate the addition of some of the real estate items in there as well to keeping us up to date on the progress of those projects. So thank you.
I would like to congratulate Kayreen and the staff on the progress they're making relative to the vouchers and increasing the utilization of the vouchers. And as regards to the emergency vouchers, I am not so worried yet because I know those are available for about 18 months or so that we're not, or that we're underutilizing them. However, I would just point out that based on the regulations, we can have more than one memorandum of understanding. So we could reach out to an additional organization if we find we are not going to be able to utilize them all with the current relationship we have, as well as my understanding is people in at least some of the categories that the program covers are able to directly refer themselves to HOC. So just a couple of ideas to plant in your mind should that become an issue. But given the time frame we have for utilizing them, I much suspect we'll be short on vouchers instead of having them left over at the end. But great work on getting them used.
I would have a couple of comments. One is, in addition to the executive director's report, we've received some other reports on activities of the organization. And I compliment the staff on the clarity and the fullness of those reports. They're very, very informative, and I really appreciate it. I would relate it to one of them on occupancy. Question I had, and you actually addressed part of it, Kayreen, in your report, is the occupancy numbers are not net of, or let me say it differently. I think we ought to see what the occupancy numbers are net of those units that we have deliberately taken offline, because there is some distortion as you look at this, because we've decided that you've got 15 units here that we're not going to lease up because we're undergoing renovation, or we're holding some units vacant because we're anticipating renovation. And that distorts the occupancy picture. On your discussion about the county and the rental assistance, does the county and the feds interpret the word priority as meaning limited to? I thought priority meant, in fact, it was priority. And I understand the rationale behind it, but I also think that having some vouchers that would exceed 50% of AMI is not a sin. Vouchers are clearly eligible for those in the other category. So I'm just not clear that they aren't over-reliant on the priority, and in the process of such over-reliance, they're hurting some of the people in the county who need assistance, and I think they ought to rethink that.
Well, we're hoping that they will. In particular, we made the point to them that much of the affordable housing in the county was created under the low-income housing tax credit program. It's 60% of the area median income. And that's a large number of people who are at risk. Many of them are in HOC's housing, but they're also private landlords. And so we're hoping that they will shift off that position, in particular because the Treasury allows for up to 80% of the area median income, and that the second tranche of the rental assistance limits it to the 50%. So it's in everybody's best interest to fund some of those folks that are above 50. I mean, those should be the priority, to be quite frank, so that the second tranche that is only available to the low-income folks are allocated to them. So we'll continue to push for that, and hopefully we'll make some progress there.
Thank you.
Is there any other questions from commissioners or comments? If not, could we move to the commissioners exchange? Are there any exchange of information between commissioners is necessary at this time? I guess we've talked each other out through committee meetings. Let's just move forward then to the next part of it, the approval of minutes. And we have a series of minutes to be approved for September 1st, 2001, September 21st closed session, September 15th special session, September 15th closed special session, the September 23rd special session, and the September 23rd closed special session. Can I get a motion to approve the minutes?
Commissioner Byrd, I move approval of the meeting minutes as listed.
I second.
It has been properly moved and seconded to approve the minutes as noted. Are there any questions? All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposers? So ordered. The next matter is for special closed and special session ratification. The item is the ratification of action taken in the closed special session held on September 23rd, 2023, which was the approval to accept 2 lines of credit from PNC Bank. The motion to approve.
I move approval of the special session ratification.
You have a second?
Byrd, I second.
It's been properly moved and seconded to approve and to ratify the closed and special session reference. Any questions? All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposers, nay. So ordered, a unanimous vote. We have one consent item, which is the approval to amend the HOC's written minutes dated October 15th, 2009. There's a motion to approve.
I move that we approve amending the minutes of October 15th, 2019.
Second.
It's been properly moved and seconded. Are there any questions? Those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
The opposers? Approved unanimously. Next items are committee reports and recommendations for action. The first committee report we will hear from the Budget, Finance, and Audit Committee is chaired by Commissioner Nelson.
The first report we have is the fourth quarter budget to actual statements and acceptance of the fourth quarter budget to actual statements. And I guess we'll start off with Cornelia, who will then hand it off.
Good evening, or good afternoon, commissioners and staff. The first item we have again is the fiscal year 2021 fourth quarter budget to actual statements, and we will have Terry Fowler, our budget officer, present that.
Thank you, Cornelia. Good afternoon, commissioners and staff. The agency ended the year with a net cash surplus of approximately $1.24 million, which equates to 0.44% of the total operating budget of approximately $285.2 million and 0.67% of the adjusted operating budget when excluding housing assistance payments. The primary cause for this was the savings in various expense categories in the general fund and slightly higher cash flow in some of the unrestricted opportunity housing properties as a result of property performance. The Housing Choice Voucher Program ended the year with an administrative surplus of $2.2 million as a result of higher than anticipated administrative fee incomes coupled with savings in expenses. And the surplus will be restricted for future administrative costs of the program. Staff recommends, and the BF&A joins the recommendation, that the surplus of $1,241,830 be restricted 50%, or $620,915, to the general fund operating reserve for future operational needs, and 50% to the Opportunity Housing Property Reserve to help replenish the reserve to fund shortfalls for capital needs that can be expected during the fiscal year 22 and 23 budget season. The resolution is on page 87 of your packet, and I'd be happy to address any questions you may have.
Terry, this is Commissioner Byrd. I have a question on page 79 of 192. This is under the Opportunity Housing Fund. And the second sentence reads, bad debt expense on the properties continued to grow during FY21 with an ending balance of 3.3 million. Is that 3.3 million in the Opportunity Housing Fund or our bad debt expense fund? Just wasn't sure about that sentence.
Yes, I'd be happy to clarify. $3.3 million is the expense that we recognize in Opportunity Housing for unreceived rents, which is booked to an expense account called bad debt expense.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Terry.
You are welcome.
If there are no other questions, I would move approval of resolution 21-992.
I second. Roy, you're on mute.
It's been probably moved and second to approve resolution 21-92. Are there any questions? All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
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 With nay, so ordered. Thank you very much for that report.
The next item on the agenda is the commission approval of the FY 2022 first quarter budget amendment. And again, I'll go to Cornelia and Terry, I think.
Thank you again, Commissioner Nelson. And yes, Terry Fowler, our budget officer, will go ahead and walk us through this packet.
Thank you. The net effect of the fiscal 22 first quarter budget amendment is a surplus of $192,960. The adopted budget for fiscal 22 included a projected draw of approximately $1.43 million from the general fund operating reserve to balance the budget. Staff recommends that the surplus be used to reduce the anticipated draw by the approximately $193,000, taking the draw down to $1.24 million. The total operating budget of the agency in the budget amendment increased from $292.9 million to $300.4 million as a result of capital rollovers of unfinished projects, a new grant award, and the addition of the Bradley Crossing property. The capital budget for the agency increased from $438.3 million to $439.1 million. And the Budget Finance and Audit Committee has joined staff's recommendation. I will be happy to answer any questions that you have related to the budget amendment.
If there are no questions, I'd move approval of resolution 21-93.
I second Linda Kroom.
Been probably moved and second to approve resolution 21-93. Are there any questions? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposers? Approved unanimously.
Thank you.
Next item on the agenda is the uncollectible tenant accounts receivable and authorization to write off those. And I will turn it over to Cornelia, who will then pass it off.
Thanks again, Commissioner Nelson. So the next item is the authorization to request the write-off of uncollectible tenant account receivables from April through June of 2021. And Eugenia Pascal, our controller, will go ahead and walk us through this packet.
Good afternoon, commissioners and staff. The fiscal year 21 fourth quarter proposal to write off uncollectible accounts receivable from past tenants was discussed at the BFNA committee on September 21, 2021, and the committee supports the staff recommendation. The agency is providing for an allowance for any tenant accounts receivable which have been outstanding for over 90 days. On a quarterly basis, the staff also recommends to the Commission the write-off of uncollected receivables from former residents. The proposed write-off, which covers April 1st to June 30, 2021, amounts to about $50,000, $17,000 lower compared to the previous quarter. The fourth quarter total includes $34,000 from Opportunity Housing properties. These are largely from former tenants at Camp Hill Square, Sligo Development, MPDU 3, and Scattered Site 1. The McKinney programs also contributed $15,000, and the remaining $800 is accounted for by the RAD properties. The primary reasons for the write-offs across the properties are mostly due to tenants who skipped or voluntarily left their units, tenants who passed away, and tenants who want more space. Some former tenants also purchased home, no longer qualifies for the program, or has some lease violations. The next write-off will be for the first quarter of fiscal year 22, which will cover July 1st, 21 to September 30, 21. If you have any questions, we'll be happy to answer them. Thank you.
If there are no questions, I move approval of resolution 21-94.
Commissioner Byrd, I second.
It's been properly moved and seconded to approve resolution 21-94. Are there any
It's
questions?
also within, as the note I
Oh,
shot you, and I apologize.
If there are no questions, those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, no, nay. The motion, the resolution approved unanimously.
The next item is the addition of a third signer to HOC bank accounts. This matter will be discussed by Cornelia Kent.
Good afternoon, Commissioners, and for the record, I am Cornelia Kent, the Chief Financial Officer. We are requesting the addition of the Director of Human Resources to be added as our third signer to HOC's bank accounts. The item was discussed at the BFNA committee meeting on September 21st, and the committee supports the recommendation. With the recent departure of our former executive director, we currently have two authorized signers on the accounts, the acting executive director and the CFO. In an effort to avoid any situations where there's only one authorized signer, we are requesting to add the Director of Human Resources. This will, complete it to three signers and who are all members of the executive staff. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
If there are no questions, I would move approval of resolution 21-95.
I second.
Probably moved and seconded to approve resolution 21-95. Are there any questions? Those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, nay. The resolution is approved unanimously. The next item of business coming forward is through the Development and Finance Committee. The chair of the committee, Jackie Simons, is not present for today's meeting. So I would ask if Rick Nelson would in fact carry forward with these items.
Oh, sure. Thanks. The first item under this is the approval of the financing plan for Georgian Court, the feasibility and public purpose authorization to issue loans to HOC at Georgian Court. And this item is going to be addressed by, at least initially, by Jennifer Hines.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. I'm Jennifer Hines-Arrington, the Acting Director of Mortgage Finance, and Victoria Dixon will be presenting the request to approve the Georgian Court financing plan. Go ahead, Victoria.
Hello, thank you. Hello, Commissioners. My name, for the record, is Victoria Dixon, the Senior Multifamily Underwriter in Mortgage Finance, and we are requesting approval of the financing plan for Georgian Court. Georgian Court is an existing 147-unit income-restricted community in Silver Spring, Maryland. The property was originally constructed in 1975 and renovated in 2001 using LIHTC equity. On September 1st of this year, the Commission approved the final development plan to acquire, renovate, and equip the property with improvements to energy efficiency, common areas, building exteriors, and in-unit upgrades of finishes and appliances in bathrooms and kitchens. If you would please move forward to page 111. In order to execute the development plan, the Commission is requested to approve the following actions for this transaction. Approval of the Georgian Court financing plan as presented, totaling approximately $72.5 million. Approval of the feasibility, public purpose, and allocation of up to $29.3 million in volume cap for this transaction. Authorization to issue a financing commitment for the mortgage loan with a balloon payment option. Credit enhanced via FHA risk share mortgage insurance, for which HOC will assume 50% of the risk. Approval for net sales proceeds due to the seller to be funded to the Commission's Opportunity Housing Reserve Fund on an unrestricted basis. Approval to provide a bridge loan of approximately $3.5 million from the OHRF to be drawn as needed during construction to bridge the receipt of the LIHTC equity proceeds. Approval to release available cash held by the seller entity. And finally, for the borrower to accept the proposed mortgage loan and bridge loans. Staff will return separately with a bond authorizing resolution request. If you would please move to the schedule tab, page 113. Based on the current schedule, the bond and initial mortgage loan closings are expected to occur in late November 2021 with conversion to permanent debt in August 2024. If you would please move forward 3 slides to the public purpose slide. A review of the transaction has been completed and been determined to meet the needs of the community and provide significant public purpose by preserving affordable housing income restrictions for all units for an additional 21 years, with 8 units newly renovated to meet UFAS requirements. And in addition, proposed rents will remain approximately 32 to 36% lower than the market, therefore supporting an allocation of volume cap for the 4% tax credits. If you would please move to the next slide. As underwritten, stabilized operations are projected sufficient to meet the base FHA risk share debt service coverage ratio of 115 times. Based on the all-in interest rate of 3.67%, which is inclusive of a 38 basis point cushion for interest rate movements. The property is projected to support a loan of approximately $17.3 million. Excluding the cushion, the transaction supports a mortgage amount of approximately $18.5 million. On the next slide is the sources and uses table. The transaction is determined to be feasible with stabilized operations and total funding sources sufficient to meet all the projected uses of the financing plan. Sources include issuance of tax-exempt private activity bonds and taxable bonds up to a total $30,050,000, which will be used to fund a 38-year mortgage loan with balloon payment option and a bond reserve under the 1996 indenture. HOC will share in 50% of the mortgage risk with FHA. To satisfy the LIHTC 50% test, an allocation of up to $29.3 million of volume cap is necessary. Remaining sources will include LIHTC equity, a bridge loan using seller proceeds from the OHRF, deferred developer fee, a subordinate seller loan, and available property cash held in the residual receipts account. If you would move forward 2 slides to page 120. In conclusion, staff, with the support of the Development and Finance Committee, recommends the Commission approval of the actions as presented. Are there any questions?
If there are no questions, I would move approval of resolution 21-96.
I second.
Probably moved and seconded to approve resolution number 21-96. Before taking the vote, I'd make one comment. Since our chair of the committee, Jackie Sanders, is not present, just to represent her, I want to acknowledge the fact that we are achieving 8 more UFAS units as a result of the work that we're doing on this property. So with that notation, all those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
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 Those opposed? The resolution is approved unanimously.
Okay, the next item is approval of a number of actions related to the financing plan for Shady Grove, similar to that which we've just done for the last item.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Again, this is Jennifer Arrington, Acting Director of Mortgage Finance, and Victoria will present the Shady Grove presentation.
Hello, Commissioners. We are requesting approval of the financing plan for Shady Grove, an existing 144-unit income restricted community in Derwin, Maryland. If you would please move forward 2 slides. The property was originally constructed in 1980 and renovated using LIHTC equity. On September 1st of this year, the Commission approved the final development plan to acquire, renovate, and equip the property. If you would please move forward 2 slides. In order to execute on this development plan, the following actions are requested of the Commission for the transaction. Approval on the Shady Grove financing plan as presented, totaling approximately $61 million. Approval of the feasibility, public purpose, and allocation of up to $30,750,000 in volume cap for the transaction. Authorization to issue a financing commitment for the mortgage loan with a balloon payment option, which will be credit enhanced with FHA risk share mortgage insurance, for which HOC will assume 50% of the risk. Approval for net sales proceeds due to the seller to be funded to the OHRF on an unrestricted basis. Approval for HOC to provide a bridge loan of approximately $13.6 million from the OHRF to be drawn as needed to bridge the receipt of LIHTC equity proceeds. Approval to release available cash held by the seller entity. And finally, for the borrower to accept the proposed mortgage loan and bridge loan. We will return separately with a bond authorizing resolution request. If you would please move forward 2 slides to the schedule. Based on the current schedule, the bond and initial mortgage loan closings are expected to occur in late November of 2021, with conversion to permanent debt by July 2024. 2 slides forward is public purpose. We have reviewed the transaction and determined to meet the needs of the community, providing significant public purpose by preserving affordable housing with income restrictions for all units preserved for an additional 23 years. The addition of 8 units newly renovated to meet UFAS requirements. In addition, the property location allows for easy access to transportation, shopping, and services. With the proposed rent subject to public purpose rental assistance, they are approximately 4 to 10% lower than the market, therefore supporting an allocation of volume cap for the 4% tax credits. On the next slide, as written, underwritten, stabilized operations are projected sufficient to meet the base FHA risk share debt service coverage ratio of 115 times, based on the all-in interest rate of 3.67%, inclusive of a 38 basis point cushion for interest rate movements. The property is projected to support a loan of approximately $28.7 million. Excluding this cushion, the transaction supports a mortgage amount of approximately $30.3 million. On the next slide is the sources and uses table. The transaction is determined to be feasible.
Sorry, can you move to page 137?
Thank you.
Next slide, please. Thank you. The transaction is determined to be feasible with stabilized pro forma and total funding sources sufficient to meet all the projected uses of the financing plan, with the issuance of tax-exempt private activity bonds and taxable bonds up to $32 million, which will fund a 38-year mortgage loan with a balloon payment option and bond reserve under the 1996 indenture. HOC will share in 50% of the risk of the mortgage with FHA. To satisfy the LIHTC 50% test, an allocation of up to $30,750,000 of volume cap is necessary. Remaining sources include LIHTC equity, a bridge loan to the borrower using seller proceeds from the OHRF, deferred developer fee, and a subordinate seller loan. On the next slide, please. As mentioned, Shady Grove will require an allocation of up to $30.75 million in volume cap, which creates a shortfall in available cap for 2021. Staff has held discussions with CDA and has submitted a formal request for an additional $5 million in volume cap, which CDA has affirmed that HOC's additional needs will be met for the year. Next slide, 139. In conclusion, staff, with the support of the Development and Finance Committee, recommends the Commission approval of the actions as presented. Are there any questions?
If there are no questions, before making the motion, let me just say for the benefit of those listening in, all of these items have been thoroughly discussed by the committees at their last meeting, which was a public meeting on televised or streamed, just to let you know that we have gone through all of these in considerable detail. And I credit the chair of the committee for working through all this stuff. And based on that, I would recommend, I would move approval of resolution 21-97.
I second Commissioner Croom.
Properly moved and seconded to approve resolution number 21-94. Before calling for the question, I will again give you the Jackie Simon notation about acknowledging the additional UFAS units. Now we've got 2 projects that will come before us. We now have a total of 16 additional units for UFAS. So staff continue to do good work.
Roy, do you want to tell people what UFAS stands for, just in case they aren't aware?
Yes, these are units that are set aside for assisting those who are handicap accessible units that we make available. And they are fitted out with appropriate accommodations, especially, I hope these are ones that have the walk-in shower enclosures, which we talked a lot about, but they provide, in fact, additional units to assist the people who need handicap accessible units. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposers, nay. The resolution 2197 is approved unanimously.
Sorry, Mr. Chair, that I failed to acknowledge the UFAS units on those last 2 projects. I'll have to explain to the commissioner why I missed it, but it's because I wanted you to have the opportunity to tout the success that Jackie has had in moving us this way. Anyway, and all kidding aside, I think it's a serious effort on the part of HOC in this area to ensure that among all those that we serve, that we really adequately serve those who have significant disabilities and need additional things in their units to make life as enjoyable for them as it is for other residents. And I think staff has done a lot, focused a lot recently on these issues. The next item is approval of a bond authorization resolution amending and restating the bond resolution for Willow Manor properties. And I believe Jennifer Arrington is going to handle this, or at least start.
Correct. Again, good afternoon, Commissioners. I'm Jennifer Arrington, Acting Director of Mortgage Finance, and Victoria Dixon once again will present the request to approve a bond authorizing resolution that combines Willow Manor properties, Georgian Court, and Shady Grove transactions under a single resolution.
Hello, Commissioners. The committee, the commission has just approved the financing plans, feasibility, and public purpose for both Georgian Court and Shady Grove. And staff recommends, with the support of the Development and Finance Committee, to approve a bond authorizing resolution for these transactions. However, given that the bond issuance schedule for the Willow Manor properties transaction, as authorized by the Commission on September 1st of this year, under Resolution 2184B, is now trending with Georgian Court and Shady Grove, staff further recommends that the Commission approve the bond authorizing resolution for the Willows be amended and restated in its entirety in order to incorporate approval to issue bonds for Georgian Court and Shady Grove. Combining these into a single bond authorizing resolution will achieve efficiency and cost savings of approximately $250,000. The Willows transaction was approved for up to $55 million, and inclusion of Georgian and Shady Grove transactions will add an additional $62.1 million. Therefore, approval of the new resolution will include, among other things, the issuance of tax-exempt and taxable bonds not to exceed $117.1 million under the 1996 indenture in one or more series to fund a FHA risk share mortgage loan for each of those transactions, and B, required indenture bond reserves. In conclusion, does the commission approve to amend and restate the bond authorizing resolution as described?
I have a couple of questions on this one. Could we go to
Commissioner Michaels, could we get the motion first and then we'll take the questions?
Okay, I move approval of resolution 21-98.
I second.
Already moved and seconded. Question, Commissioner Michaels.
Yeah, could we go to slide or page 147? So, and if you want to scroll down, I'm looking at the footnote there. So which you can't see yet, if you scroll down a little farther, scroll down on the page to the bottom. There we go. So what I note is that on the plan that we approved for Willow Manor, we had a risk share of 25% risk for HOC and 75% risk for FHA. And we're shifting that to 50-50. It looks like that's required for this loan structure, for the balloon loan structure. I was a couple of questions related to this. Just wondering, if you want to talk about the implications for that, that this means that we're taking on additional risk for that project. Is that where the $250,000 in cost savings comes from with us taking on that additional risk, or where is that coming from? So,
the cost savings comes from the cost of issuance itself for the 3 transactions. And the change for the risk is based upon the balloon structure. FHA requires that FHA and the agency HOC take part 50-50 in the risk of the transaction. That's a structural technicality of the balloon.
So are there savings for us there, or we're just taking on additional risk?
We are taking on the additional risk because we are requesting the balloon, but what we do save on is interest. We should be saving about 20 basis points of interest.
From the risk sharing.
Our bonds will be, the interest rate will be lower by adding in a balloon.
I see.
And it's not a big number, but HOC receives a bigger portion of the mortgage insurance premium.
Correct.
Right. So that's.
But that's and that's not the motivation. The motivation is really the
right. Yeah, no, I understand the motivation. I just wanted to make sure I understood the implications. So there's some savings in the insurance premium, but should anything go wrong, which hopefully it won't, but we would be on the hook for more.
Yeah, and just to give you a quick summary of how that works. If there's a failure of the real estate and there's a default, FHA pays off the bondholders and they go away. And HOC then is required to enter into a debenture agreement with FHA. And there's a workout process over a 5-year period. And the workout can be the loan gets refinanced and or the property is sold. And if there's a loss at that point from the sale of the property, let's say the loss ends up being $1 million, then HOC would be responsible for $500,000 and FHA $500,000. If it's a 25/75, then it would be the pro rata amount. So that's where the loss comes in, not 50% of whatever the loan amount, not $55 million. It's whatever the actual loss is. So that's how that works.
Sure. Okay. No additional questions. Thank you.
If no other questions, all in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, nay. Nay. Resolution is approved unanimously.
Thank you.
The next item is the approval to remove a cap of 6.5 million and restore the maximum bridge loan of 12 million for Upton 2. And this is going to be handled by Zach and probably Marcus, I guess.
Jay.
Kareem.
Oh, sorry.
I'm going to go directly to Marcus.
Oh, no, actually,
Step in, Marcus.
Okay.
it's going to be Jay Shepard, Housing Acquisition Manager.
Well, geez, I tried.
That's all.
It's one of those three characters, right?
Yeah, that's true.
All right. Thank you, Commissioner, and thank you. Good evening, Commissioners. For the record, I am Jay Shepard, Housing Acquisition Manager in Real Estate Development. And this item is on page 157. It's for Upton 2. The approval to remove a cap of $6.5 million on a bridge note that will restore the maximum bridge loan amount of $12 million previously approved against draws on the PNC relock for the Upton 2 financing. Back in early 2019, the Commission did approve the financing plan for Upton 2, and that included, among other things, among other capital stack items, a bridge funding amount that was to be paid during construction from the PNC relock. That authorization approved up to $12 million during construction until such time as the LIHTC equity funds were received. Due to a need for a bifurcated closing of the construction piece and the LIHTC equity funding sources, the bridge note included a provision that would cap the 12 million down to 6.5 million, which assumed the need for the bridge funding would be reduced once the LIHTC equity closed. The $6.5 million cap at the time was deemed sufficient because of the estimates we had for our construction draw timing, as well as our projected LIHTC equity pay-in schedule. The LIHTC equity closed 8 months later in November of 2019, and it had a larger equity contribution, turns out, but a slower LIHTC pay-in schedule than we had previously projected. And so it's leaving a gap during the construction process of funds that we need the bridge funding to compensate for. And therefore, staff is requesting that via this resolution of 21-99, that the bridge note be amended to remove that $6.5 million cap, restoring the $12 million authorization until the LIHTC equity is contributed to the project, which comes next year. And so, thank you. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer those.
I would move approval of resolution 21-99.
I'll second, and just to comment, we discussed this in committee. This was a self-imposed cap. Not clear why we did it. I would advocate that we don't do it again. But I second.
Probably moved and seconded. Are there other questions? Those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye. Aye.
Those opposed, nay. Resolution 2199 is approved unanimously. And I'd like to thank you, Commissioner Nelson, for stepping in and chairing this portion of the agenda. And we will now move to items requiring deliberation and action. We have one item, which is related to 4527 Avondale Street. And who's going to handle that presentation?
Thank you, Chair Priest. I'll lead us through this one. For the record, Zachary Marks, Chief Real Estate Officer. And as you mentioned, the item here is 4527 Avondale Street. It is a property that is owned by HOC. And HOC came to own this property by triggering the right of first refusal on 4 such buildings, inclusive of 4527 along Avondale Street in 2015. These were naturally occurring units. These are naturally occurring units that HOC sought to preserve from redevelopment that was likely to cause displacement. The core of the request here is that recently the building to the west of 4527, which is, sorry, 1 second. Let me just turn the cartoons off here.
31.
Sorry about that. So recently the county and HOC received a right of first refusal package on 4531, which is immediately to the west of 4527. The two properties owned immediately to the east of 4527 are owned by the National Center for Children and Families, who back in 2015, I believe, worked with DHCA to actually acquire and renovate those properties to serve families and children that were at some risk of homelessness. And so when this new right of first refusal came in for 4531, NCCF approached the county about potentially looking at that right of first refusal, but obviously HOC's property in between would make sense to sort of create a contiguous set of properties to pursue the same mission. And so, so what we have here today is so that NCCF may continue that conversation with DHCA is would be an indication of interest, a letter of interest from HOC, non-binding, simply saying that you know, we understand what you're looking to continue discussing with DHCA. They you know, they'll be making a decision about not only triggering on 4531 soon, but also whether to provide all the adequate funding to you know, to acquire both 27 and 31, as well as to fund the necessary renovations. Again, similarly to 4519 and 4523, which are already owned by NCCF. Really, the one decision for the commission to make is kind of the price point here. 4531 is under contract for 1.225. So certainly one way for the commission to sort of justifiably set a price is to say these are two absolutely identical buildings. That's the fair market price on 31. And so we're fine just, you know, we're fine transferring for the same price. If we want to look at a cost basis, allocating these were not the 4 properties that HOC bought along Avondale Street in 2015 were not bought individually. They were bought as a package price. So if you just simply do kind of a pro rata based on, you know, the 4 units out of 25 total units at 4527, that gives you about 1.104. HOC also has spent about $79,000 in interest costs to carry that building. So, you know, there's also potentially to look, you know, adding that in, and you're around 1182. This is not a very big window anyway. So, but that would be the guidance we're looking for you tonight. Otherwise, we think it's a pretty straightforward LOI. We'd want it to be coterminous with the process of closing on 4531 if the HCA indeed triggers on that. We would, staff's not looking for any sort of an earnest money deposit given who we're working with here. I should also add that one of the things that may help what's, you know, sort of help certainty around all of this is that there is some new availability of money from the American Rescue Act that the county has recently received a pretty decent number in terms of funding, and that funding must go directly toward housing that serves homeless populations or those who may be in danger of homelessness. So there's actually really kind of a nice alignment of timing here as well. And so, you know, our sense while we wait for DHCA to give, you know, its final decision is that it does seem that, you know, discussions with NCCF are going along well. So this is simply to give NCCF the piece of paper they need to show DHCA that, you know, the commission is open to continuing this discussion, and that it's, you know, headed that from a concept standpoint, it's headed in the right direction. So I'm happy to speak to anything else in the packet, but that's sort of the rationale. And again, this is a non-binding LOI. We would look for you to help us fill in fill in the transfer price. And then in the event that the HCA does agree to move forward with funding and triggering, we'd come back to you in another cycle or two to to firm things up.
Well, my thought on this is that one, it's same purpose in terms of the clientele served, but I think better served because it's a continuation of the program that NCCF has. And we don't necessarily need the property across the street. In terms of pricing, I mean, fortunately, the difference between, if I hear you correctly, is 1.225 and 1.18 or something. So
Yeah.
It's not that much.
Right.
My first instinct would be just to say cost, but recognizing what a sale price does to the rest of the community, I think we ought to go with the market price because you don't want to unfairly deflate property values for somebody who wants to sell a house next door or around the corner. So I think we ought to go 1.225.
I'm curious, I wonder how much of an impact that would actually have. I will admit, because we are selling, or we potentially would be selling to a mission-driven organization here, as you say, Rick, that would perhaps better serve, the clients. I'm comfortable, and again, because it's not a large difference, I'm comfortable with going with the lower of the two.
It's the county that's going to pay. The NCCF isn't going to pay. But I mean, I'm not. I prefer the 1.225.
Yeah.
I prefer the 1.225. If we got pushback, then you could go down to the lower. But yeah, no, it's not like I'm trying to hold NCCF up.
Right. Okay. Thanks.
And if we actually considered, I mean, you say cost, then we put in it takes it to 185. I'm not sure that includes all of the staff costs that have been involved in both transactions. Anyway, so
the action pending before us today doesn't require us to approve as part of an action. If we did this, the actual sale price.
Yeah, it does.
Does it? Is it? I thought that was not in the. Is there a stated amount in the resolution?
It's yeah, we left it blank for this conversation. So
yeah. You're asking the commission to determine what we should put in as a value.
Yeah, we wanted to make sure we gave at least guidance on kind of the base terms, including where the commission would be on transfer price.
I mean, I guess with Rick's clarification for me, there's that it's coming from the county. I mean, I don't want to screw the county either, but that it would be coming to us, and we would be putting it to good use, obviously. So I think the county would be benefiting from whatever funds we receive. So I'll reverse.
So Zach, this is Commissioner Byrd. So since you have a range in there, can we ask for the 1.225, but not to go lower than the 1.1? And that way we kind of stay within the range. And then if something happens at the higher amount, that you don't really have to come back to us and hold up any potential progress on the transaction.
I mean, I think we can certainly go to them because, and this is a non-binding LOI. So certainly when we come back for the PSA, if there's, a need to revise it to, somehow jeopardizes the transaction, then obviously y'all can consider it at that point. But I think at least giving them an indication that, hey, we think it really should be at X. That's where we're opening. Let's talk if it's an issue.
Yeah, I would recommend the 1.225.
Okay.
So are you making the motion to approve the resolution?
Yeah, I can. This is Commissioner Byrd. I move approval of Resolution 21-100 for the sale amount of 1.225.
Second.
Probably moved and seconded. On the comments I'd like to make is that if there are future situations like this, I would really appreciate getting your staff's recommendation as opposed to coming to the commission asking us to establish the value. I would prefer to be able to react to it. If we have questions about it, then that's fine, but not to put us in a position to have to establish the value. With that notion, all in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposers, nay. Resolution 221-100 is approved unanimously.
Thank you.
There's no other agendized business. And pursuant to section 3-305B and D of the General Provisions Article of the Annotated Code of Maryland, I move to adopt a written closing statement dated October 6, 2021, and to adjourn this open session to a closed session to discuss the potential acquisition of a single-family home located in Gaithersburg, Maryland. There are two reasons why this topic is being discussed in closed session. First, the meeting must be closed in order to protect HOC's bargaining power. Public discussion of the issue could result in less favorable pricing or in HOCs not being able to acquire the property. Secondly, section 4-335 of the Maryland Public Information Act prevents disclosure of confidential commercial or financial information obtained from a third party. The meeting must be closed in order to protect confidential information provided to HOC from its financial and development partners. The statutory exception being used to close the meeting are sections 3-305B3 and 3-305B13. If any member of the public wishes to object to the closed meeting, please comment in the YouTube chat box or contact HOC's General Counsel. Instructions can be found in the State of Emergency Open Meeting Procedures, which is posted on HOC's website. I'd like to take a motion to adjourn the meeting.
So moved.
Seconded.
Probably moving to adjourn the meeting. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. So ordered. The meeting is now adjourned.